Okay, here we go. So this is Wednesday, January 22nd, and it's our first episode of webTalkTO. And my name is Marwan. We have Sergey on the other line, and we're very happy to be here. So I'll take a second to introduce myself, I guess. Like I said, my name is Marwan, and I'm a front-end developer. I've been doing front-end work for around 10 years, dabbled with all sorts of JavaScript frameworks, and just really interested in the development world, and thought I'd take this opportunity to share my knowledge. Also, Sergey, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. My name is Sergey, and I am in web development for close to 14 years now. I've worked in a whole bunch of different digital agencies, and lately I'm working for 6 years I've been working for the enterprise level retailer, e-commerce. I'm really into JavaScript. I love JavaScript. I probably speak it better than English. And yeah,
Good on.
I think it's just I want to talk a little bit about how we decided to make the show. We kind of thought that it might be a good opportunity for each one of us to learn from each other and also share some of the knowledge. And yeah, that would keep us motivated to keep recording, keep sharing. Hopefully, our audience will find it interesting, and we're not asking for a lot, but please subscribe.
Yeah. This is a new thing for us, and I share the same sentiment with Sergey. We've talked a lot about, what's the best way to kind of share our knowledge and apply our learnings, because you don't get to apply it at work, sometimes. So we thought, why don't we start this kind of a show and just talk and go on and on and on, and probably some audiences will get bored sometimes, but I think it will be useful most of the time. And so this is great. Don't forget to subscribe, like,
Comment,
and
please comment, please leave your feedback. But yeah,
yes,
exciting.
that's a good idea. Feedback is very valuable.
Yeah, maybe we'll take some of the comments and discuss them in the next show.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Probably all one comment that we will get. We can discuss it in our next show.
We'll see. Over time,
Okay.
remember that over time it will get popular, and yeah, people will find it valuable.
Yeah, I think it will. It takes time, but either way, I enjoy doing it, so that's
Right.
just a bonus. Yeah.
So what are we speaking about today?
Okay, so today we're talking about two things. We're gonna be discussing Gatsby. There's basically two parts to the show. We're going to be discussing Gatsby, and we're also going to be discussing same-site cookies. So I'll go over Gatsby first and basically give a high level. Oh, and another thing is about this show is we decided that we would pick topics that the other one doesn't know about. And it's kind of an opportunity to, allow the other person to ask questions and cover our knowledge gaps, I guess, that way.
Yep.
So I don't know anything about same-site cookies, and Sergey doesn't know anything about Gatsby. A little bit, yeah, true. I don't know anything about same-site cookies. Yeah, so what is Gatsby? So Gatsby is it's a static site generator. It is GraphQL based, meaning it's unique in the sense that you can have different CMS systems connect to it, and based on that, it will generate the final static files. So it's still kind of, the idea is to rely on CMS systems like WordPress, like Contentful, like Strappy, which I'm going to talk about. But you're compiling at build time, generating these static files, but deriving the content from the CMS. So it's a bit unique in that way. And basically, the idea behind it is to have a super fast website or web app, because you are no longer dynamically generating anything. You're not connecting to a database. You're just simply serving HTML, CSS, JavaScript files. And we all know the advantages of just having those kind of static assets.
Yeah. And I have some questions already. So can you only use like in order to generate the websites, can you only use CMS, or can you go away without using CMS?
Yeah, no, you can definitely get away without CMS. They have like a file, so you can still store your content in the same project. You can have like markdown files, and there's plugins like even though Gatsby treats everything as a CMS, and the way to access that data is through a GraphQL backend, but the file system is actually treated like a CMS. So there is a plugin to use the file system to pull that data. So you can have a more simplistic CMS, so to speak. But yeah, you definitely don't need to right away start with the actual CMS. You can just have everything locally, like stored in the file system. Yeah.
All right, cool.
I will just go over to their website for a second, just to see what if they've captured it. Obviously, they've captured it in a better way. But yeah, so it's a free open source framework. Oh, and it's an important one, is it's based on React. So all of your components, your pages, everything is React based, which is super nice for front-end developers. And yeah, it supports CMSs, it supports markdowns, and you can actually hook up to other APIs, like custom APIs. And this is the flow of it. So it takes the data sources, it builds using GraphQL to pull the data, and then it generates the final thing, and that final thing can just be the static files that I was referring to. So HTML, CSS, JavaScript, that's all you're deploying. So let us just take this for a spin. So they have a thing called Gatsby CLI. That's the best way to get started. So I have a new folder that I created, and I'm gonna install the Gatsby CLI globally. And they have starter projects. I'm pretty sure this one will start reloading. Okay, so just as we're installing npm, they also have starter project, starter library. By default, I'm pretty sure you will get a starter project. Yeah. So I'll just copy this shell here.
Yes, you didn't install it before.
Yeah. I was so prepared. Yeah, we were talking about that earlier, how unprepared we are. We've been super busy.
Yeah.
But we keep postponing the episodes, so we're like, okay, even if it's a bit shaky, let's just do it.
But we're super motivated, like super excited about that happening.
Yeah. Yeah, it's getting over the first hump. Like we've been trying to record for 2-3 weeks now, and it's finally happening. So
yeah, we were running on all kind of issues, like how do you, like what tools do you use to communicate and record and put, like two faces on one screen at the same time as you're presenting, and like sound issues, and like constant search, logo. Like it took us probably like one day to agree on the name and
with
the logo.
the name and the logo, yeah, and setting up the accounts. It's it's definitely more work than I thought it would be. And like we literally tried every program, like Slack, Discord, Skype, Skype for Business,
TeamViewer,
TeamViewer,
Bliss.
the other one that's
Yeah.
TeamViewer.
Bliss. It's called Bliss.
Yeah. And we landed on Microsoft Teams. Like Microsoft really pulled through on this one. It was pretty awesome. So as you can see, my project is starting to come true. Interesting. Okay, so go to Gatsby site and I'll open it up here. Okay, so let's look at the NPM, and basically can look at React DOM, Helmet. These are all the plugins that they cover on their website. This Gatsby source file system, that's what would work with the file system, basically to have content be pulled in from there. But let's get it.
Do you know what that React Helmet is for? Like, because I thought that Helmet is a package that is there to kind of like for, say, like it's like a middleware for Express where it would bring a whole bunch of security measures. But since that is a static website, then what kind of security does it handle for you?
No, I think I could be wrong, but I think the React Helmet is it's like it's like setting these like the site title and stuff.
Okay, yes, I get it. I remember.
Yeah. I vaguely remember that.
Yes, you're right.
But I don't know how they're using it.
Yeah, it's probably like, you're right, like to generate the title so that when you go from page to page, because React can't, like, I think it can't generate some pieces for you, so you have to use like some extra helpers for it. Like it can only generate what's inside the body, but I think not as much in head section, just from the way how I remember it.
Yeah. You have to somehow go to the head and insert, like use the standard DOM API to update the
so behind the scenes
title.
it's probably doing that.
Yeah. Okay, so now the first command I need to run is Gatsby develop, and basically we will have Gatsby running under, I believe it's localhost 8000. Yeah, localhost 8000. And this is the starter, default starter, as it says here. Comes with a few things and has an image. And actually, Gatsby treats images, like has a very solid solution for images. It's something to explore. That's actually one of the selling points. But anyways, I won't go too deep into things as of now. So what I wanted to show is the GraphQL side of it, right? So like they say on their website, everything is GraphQL based. So they actually have graphical, and graphical is like an interface that people use for communicating with a GraphQL server. It's a UI that has kind of autocomplete. You can test out your queries that way. So this is graphical for Gatsby, and you'll see they already have a few queries you can use. For example, you can get like which port your application is running on, what's the, how do you find the title?
The website
site
title?
meta. Yeah. Site meta and then title. So here we go. So it's exposing some data for you automatically. But what I want to show is I'm going to install Strapi, one of the CMSs anyways, and I'll show how you can pull the data from Strapi. And then I could cover quickly images. But let's take a look at the folder structure for now. I guess it starts simple. So the way it does things is it has this index page, which is a React component, and using just functional components. And this is what you see on the initial page. And in here, we are using the image component, SEO. We also have page 2. And that's what happens when you click on page 2. Hide from the second page. We have this header component with a bunch of properties and the site title. And I guess that's used outside. This is the layout, which is the whole site. And the children are being rendered inside here. So this right here is the header component. And the header component is getting the data from GraphQL. So this is a good example to show how GraphQL is tied into how GraphQL is used within the React components. So there's this pattern where you would have your component be in the same place where you have your GraphQL query. So this exact one is basically what I showed. The title, site metadata, and title. That's what we're using here.
So it's
and we access it.
querying for data right inside the render method, right?
Yes, pretty much, because this is the render method. Yeah. So it's querying for data there, and it's interpolating it at build time. So yeah, this is a very powerful concept. So every data is accessible through GraphQL, and you have different GraphQL sources plugins that works with different sources, basically. So this is the plugins, and you'll see that a lot of the ones which have to do with retrieving data are called Gatsby source. So this is the most popular one. File system. If we look at the description, it's it creates file nodes and files.
So it's like adding another selector to your GraphQL API?
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And every time you add a new source, you will get more selectors here or queries.
And say like you're using CSV, like that was something that was mentioned on the homepage. Is it something that would be available, like
Well,
the
let's see.
content? Oh, I see. So there is another plugin for it, transformer plugin.
Gatsby transformer CSV source file system. If you put your CSV in source data, above in the middle, additional customizations. Yeah, so I guess it expects certain default each row is converted to node. Yeah, so you can even get data from a CSV using these plugins.
Mm-hmm.
How many plugins do they have?
15,
Wow,
1600?
almost 1600. Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, that's the reason why I picked Gatsby. Like, I really, really think this is the future of web development. And like, to be honest, it's like enjoyable to work with, you know. It's getting really, like, if you want to create a static website, like for example, like I'm trying to build my own personal website, the development experience is usually horrible. You know, I've tried other static site generators.
Yeah.
I don't want to go with WordPress. There's many reasons why.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you need a really beefy server to run WordPress. It's typically not that fast. There's some caching you can turn on. Like it's just so heavy
Mm-hmm.
for what you want, and you don't have the control that you get with like just static sites. But it's really a joy to work with. You know, like it's very nice to work with.
I see.
And I've even seen people do like e-commerce websites
Mm-hmm.
based on this static site generator idea. Um, yeah, like there is even there's a pretty popular one. A lot of acquisition happening. But yeah, this concept of e-commerce, like I think that's also like an interesting area to look into, because there's people who have very sophisticated workflows where um, you have a CMS that you deploy somewhere. Let's say, for the sake of argument, it's WordPress, and then you have your Gatsby live on Netlify, and then you can have webhooks within Netlify where as soon as somebody edits the WordPress, so you're still exposing the CMS, and you have webhooks that trigger every time somebody modifies the CMS, and then you're recompiling your Gatsby and deploying it. So you're getting like the same kind of experience as like fully dynamic websites or like server-side rendered websites, but like so much faster and so much cheaper to host and to put in different geographies and be on different CDNs. Like the the potential is like endless there.
Okay, so I do have some questions for you.
Sure.
So you mentioned that, like for example, this molting um, e-commerce solution for Gatsby. Why would you
Yeah.
want to use that versus something like Shopify, for example?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, I haven't used Shopify that much, but I'm guessing it's similar. Okay, yeah. So Shopify, it's I guess it's a full service solution where
Mm,
you don't have to worry about hosting the data or where you're hosting a website. You're using their platform
right.
to create a site, and they take care of all of that for you, right?
Yeah, like it's kind of like a full, uh, kind of full solution for you. It's also free as far as I know. Like maybe there is something that you would have to pay, like if you're reaching some thresholds, but it's very easy to start with. But on the other hand, like
Yeah.
I see that like with Gatsby, like if you can, like I guess the problem with Shopify is that it comes with its own templating language. So I don't know, like maybe like for web developers, for someone who is kind of like have an idea already of like what technologies they want to use, then potentially it would be easier to start with Gatsby and like have that other plugin to bring the e-commerce to them, like versus some of the websites that I have seen for Shopify, where yes, like you have that database of files where like you would have to enter the data into the fields. Maybe there is some way to export it as well, but you would have to kind of like you would be limited by their own templating language, which is I think it's Ruby based, if I'm
Is
not
it?
wrong.
Probably because I think when they started that project, it was a Ruby application, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very good point. I'm not sure how well um, Shopify scores on SEO.
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling that top. It's not top score. And well, you're in the e-commerce world. I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong, but basically, Google is ranking sites as like depending on how fast they are,
Yeah.
of how fast can the user interact with them. And so far, from what I've seen, like Gatsby is the highest scoring way to build a website.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely cached, like there's no delay. Um, but I mean, you're an expert in performance. I always go to you for like tips. Um, like, do you think Shopify would be scoring high, or these platforms?
I think it has a chance of like in my mind. I think they have a chance because they run their own CDN. Uh, so like the way how I think about it is like when you arrive to the page and it's been kind of like say on the like for that very first user who hits the page, the content would potentially come slower, but for the next users, like especially if you're a popular website, the pages would now come from the CDN, from the cache. So
Mm,
like from that perspective it should be equal. Like also like
okay.
I'm not sure like with Gatsby why people like it's kind of like mentioning like Netlify and I don't remember what were the other ones on the homepage, but it mentions other CDNs, and I wonder like if you compare like you already have static pages and you also put them on the CDN. How is that better in comparison to like having like a dynamic website behind the CDN that is caching content for you and like kind of like trying to serve that from the closest edge server for you?
It's well, it's you're probably getting the same or similar results, but the thing is, I mean, think of where you're working. It's there's a lot of resources that are put in place to achieve that kind of,
Right.
or
Yes.
for Shopify, right?
Yes. Yes.
It's not anybody who wants to, um, like if today you have a great product and you are a developer, you know a lot about development,
Mm-hmm.
and you want the flexibility. You don't want to use Shopify custom templating
Right.
language thing. Um, you have a chance now, kind of, theoretically, anyways, that you don't need to invest so much in caching and using edge servers and um,
Yes. Yeah. Like usually, it's like from my experience, like many developers who came, like the ones that are really experienced, but they don't really have that much experience working with like a dedicated CDN solution. Yes, like they know what CDN is, but they like never configured one on their own, like a, you know, some kind of like caching proxy server that has some smart logic. Like usually people are more familiar with, like with JavaScript, with CSS, with like deployment pipelines, but not as much with the CDN part, because usually those products are also pricier, like they're more expensive, and
it's yeah,
it's
it's not like you can just run a local copy of it and test it out
right.
or something like that. Well, maybe, I mean, you have valid points. Maybe the argument about e-commerce, who knows? Like, maybe I shouldn't make that argument
Mm-hmm.
that e-commerce is the way to go. Like, I guess it's a bit more, uh, you know, like it's not as black and white probably. But when it comes to sites, like just regular marketing sites, I really think this is where Gatsby shines.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of basically, if you take all the WordPress sites, you can pretty easily convert them to static sites. And just by doing that, you would be saving um, those users or the like service providers. You'd be saving them tons of money because now you don't need to run on an expensive, um, you know, like cloud service or server.
Mm-hmm.
You can just go to a very cheap alternative.
Right, right.
Um, and you can scale no problem um, if you just rely on the CDN. Your WordPress server doesn't have to be running.
Mm-hmm.
Your so maybe just making that shift, I think it could be a real game changer in terms of cost, in terms of maintenance,
Right. So it's more
and
more accessible for developers and like designers, like creative people, marketing people.
yeah, and there's a lot of like so right now Gatsby, yeah, it's pretty um, like developer heavy, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not as accessible to end users. Like
Right.
let's say, my aunt who set up like an NGO website, she went with WordPress because it's easy to use. She
Mm-hmm.
can't use Gatsby, but there are things that are being built out to abstract that further. So I think Netlify has their own CMS now that works with Gatsby.
Mm-hmm.
So behind the scenes, maybe Gatsby is being used, but the user doesn't care. They just go to a CMS, they edit a bunch of content, and they pick a template. And then, Gatsby is taking care of all of that, and they're getting the cost savings being passed to them, and they get the performance.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't even, it's going to get to a point where these users, like, they don't care about the underlying technology, but the underlying technology is is better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Yeah, so I don't know if that makes any sense. I just went on a Rent.
Totally makes sense. Let me ask you
Yeah, it's also like hard to explain. Like I almost need to, I don't know, like have visual aids, like some kind of graphs or something.
Yeah, it's all good. Let me ask you
Okay.
some more
Sure.
hard questions.
Sure.
So say you have like thousands of pages. Like
Yeah.
maybe you have 2,000 of products, right? Or
Yeah.
articles, blog posts. Maybe it's like just kind of like a community website where like a bunch of people are posting, right?
Sure.
And I can imagine, so like when you have a lot of those pages, uh, usually websites like at the bottom have something that is like a kind of like a year, like a copyright with a year, and say like we just um, like say it's a New Year's Eve, then tomorrow it should change to like from 2019 to 2020. Then you kind of like have to regenerate entire website with all of those pages. Uh, I wonder if there are like some ways to optimize for it.
Wow, that's a very, very good. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
That's a good point. And I wonder if they've talked about that at all.
I'm asking because I found that on my website like some time ago, like maybe 2 years ago, I converted my website to use Gatsby, so I
Yeah.
know a little bit of how it's working, and I noticed today that the year that I see in the UI is actually the proper year, but I know that this year I never regenerated the website. So then I looked at the server-side rendered markup, and that one has 2019, but the one on the UI says 2020. So, like it's kind of, there is that disconnect
So
between.
who changed it to 2020 then?
No one
On
changed it.
the
It's just in the code I used new date, or like just some way to kind of get what is the
Oh,
current year. And it's
okay,
in
okay.
the UI it's working because that code executes right away in the UI, but the code that arrives from the backend on the first load, that one has the kind of the old date.
Interesting. So it's but is your concern more around, okay, so regenerating the whole, so your personal website, regenerating it can be done, I'm sure, but it's not, because it's not that many pages, it's not going to be a problem. But you're saying when it's like, let's say thousands and thousands of
Right.
pages, you don't want your build to redo the whole thing, right?
Correct. Yes. Or maybe say you have like a heavy menu.
Oh, okay, I see what your point.
Yeah.
Okay, I see what your point. So, yeah, that's a very, very good. Okay, I think I have an answer.
All right.
So Gatsby, right, is kind of um, living on top of this idea of the Jamstack,
Mm-hmm.
right? So Jamstack, it goes beyond guitar amplifier now. Jamstack.org. Okay, so this is the concept behind Gatsby. I guess maybe I'm not being fair by saying Gatsby is a static site generator. It is more than that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a static site generator, um, but there's nothing preventing you from having like a web appy experience inside. So, for example, for your date thing, you don't need to recompile the whole thing because you could load the pages and then insert some JavaScript, um, lazy load that, and or maybe even like server side. Yeah. So can't server side render it, but you could kind of achieve that by using the static site and having dynamically insert some JavaScript, which will get the dynamic pieces of the site so that you don't need to recompile.
Right.
So the Jamstack idea, just quickly,
But
is
say I don't know, you want to optimize mm, for SEO, for example, right? And like there are like rumors that Google bot can parse JavaScript, and like they're improving constantly, which some people say that it's not as efficient as the server-side rendering. So I think like maybe the way how it could be solved is like when you are generating the pages, then like in those places where you want to have something dynamic, then you put, you know, like maybe placeholders, and then you kind of like you have your static content that doesn't change, and like it's very quick to get that content, but maybe you try to push it through some proxy that would then look at those placeholders and modify them.
oh, what did Google buy? What is the
Um,
the cons- or the
uh, so what I meant by that is like there are kind of like two parts to how Google is handling SEO. Like it's doing the kind of first pass through the server side markup, and then second pass later through the client side, like where it's trying to execute JavaScript and like take the pieces that are now rendered in the browser and kind of like apply SEO on top of that.
okay?
But I think like there were kind of like some concerns at least half a year ago where uh, Google used like for the client-side rendering they used Chrome version 44, which was old. But I think now they're using the evergreen version, so like now it's like always the recent one. And yeah, like now people are saying that potentially it might work better. Like some concerns were that second pass is usually slower, and you know, depending on how quickly you want to market the stuff that you have, then like it might um, affect your
Oh,
rankings, right? So
okay, I see, I see. So you want to have as minimal amount of client-side rendered stuff. That's the theory,
well,
anyways.
yes, in theory, but again, like it depends. It really depends on what is the example, like what is the website or web application. What's the goal for it?
Yeah, yeah. But if you're, yeah, to your point, like if you're trying to create marketing material or something, then you probably want it to be shown right away.
Mm.
Yeah, so I guess you can achieve a bit of both with that potential risk of, you know, getting D rank because you're rendering some stuff on the client side now. Um, but yeah, you can somehow combine the two worlds. But Jamstack, just to go back to Jamstack,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's a JavaScript API and something else. That's what it used to stand for. I don't know. They're changing the definition or what? Um,
Jamstack. Yeah, I'm not too keen on abbreviations.
yeah, JavaScript APIs and markup.
Have you heard of 5A organization?
No,
It's like
it's the 5A.
yeah, just type A, you know, like five
Oh,
times.
five
Yeah.
A's.
Uh, not this, not this. So it's basically American Association against abuse of abbreviations.
That's funny.
Against acronym and abbreviation abuse. Yeah, here we go. So it's like even longer. Yeah, some organizations are
Nice.
like really abusing the um, you know, abbreviations, and it's like
But is that a real thing?
I don't know, but like I kind of think that if it would be a real thing, I could be a member because like I really struggle like in some organizations, like I really struggle with like amount of like cryptic internal language that they use, like which is like why is it even abbreviation? But
Yeah, yeah, true.
anyway, so it's kind of like with jam right now, like what jam stands for. Is it
It looks like they're even changing the definition because it only showed in the search result, but not nowhere on the site. Okay, so I'll wrap up quickly. How long? I think I've taken way over my time. Very really nice feature that Gatsby has that I really liked is they have a good solution for images. So working with images, like beautiful, you can basically import your image, and the same way that you query data from Gatsby, you have to do it through GraphQL. So basically, they have two types of images. You can have responsive images, and you can have fluid images. So this is the fluid one,
and when you
as you
say
can see
fluid,
here.
what do you mean?
I'll tell you. So okay, so fluid image, I guess, is like you set the max width the image. Anyways, let's cover static. So
Okay.
static is basically you will have your image in your folder, and it could be 1,000 pixel by 500 or something, and you don't care about that. You just have that in your source in your project. At the time when you query it, you will specify how you want that image, whether you want it to be fluid or you want it to be fixed, and you specify the width and height. And at build time, you will actually resize it to your needs. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Because it's kind of a pain, like if you're working with your own website, and you can also specify the different source sets. I don't know if they show it here for different devices. Gatsby Image API. To handling images, yeah. React components decide. So there's an image component, which I guess is being used here. If we look at the index page, yeah, image, yeah. So image is being used here. If we go to that, this is the image that's being exported. And we're saying fluid. The image is loaded using, which allows us to load image directly from within the component rather than having to pass the image data down from pages. Images with fixed width or height. Images that stretch across a fluid container. Create flexible sizes for an image that stretches to fill its container. The automatic size would be up to provide close to the optimal image size for every device screen resolution. If you want more control over which sizes are output, you can use source set breakpoints.
And do you know if it's kind of rendering the picture element for you, or is it like what does it use to render on the front end?
I think it is the picture.
I see.
Yeah. With the source set. I guess in this case, I'm assuming they're using Fluid.
Can it do art direction? Like say, like on a smaller screen, it would know to focus on a, I don't know, like a face of the person.
Oh. That I don't know.
Maybe there is a
Besides
plugin for it.
Yeah, maybe. And it's
Oh, cool.
I think it supports the you know, the pixelated, I don't know what you call it. Like when you load the image initially, it
yeah.
loads the
skeleton kind of the image, but not just the
Yeah.
skeleton, but also kind of tries to kind of draw the shapes inside.
Yeah. Like, yeah. Did you see that? I don't know if it shows in the video.
Try to throttle your network. Let's see what happens. It must be under that gear. Oh, yeah.
Slow. Do you hear my cat?
Yeah. I thought it was the sound. Should put it into the video. Now everyone is curious.
Come here. Come here. Come here.
Hello.
Do you see her?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell the audience what's her name.
Her name is Mina, and she's 3 years old. Say bye.
She's very cute. Oh, I see. So it's pixelated, and then like it transitioned into the like it.
So if I block this as a resource, oh, that's when it's so yeah. See, it generates this.
That's nice.
Embedded base64. Block request URL.
That's the technique that Facebook was using like a while ago. Like they started using it, and then like everyone realized, wow, that's very cool. Kind of like take the image, reduce it to a tiny one for performance, and then like maybe embed it.
Oh, that's who started it? I didn't know.
Well, that's what I remember from like from say like 8 years ago when people were like kind of like going in the streetcar on a slow network on like not even like that was 3G network, and then like going through Facebook posts, and then like you could see that images were kind of blurry, and then like it animated
and then people are like, oh, I can see like he's holding a cup.
Yeah.
They spend like an hour. Okay, so I think that should conclude. Let me see if I had anything else. Gatsby's plugins. I wanted to go over Strappy. So Strappy, just quickly, I really wanted to kind of point that CMS out. Amazing CMS. I was working with a client recently, and she wanted like a static, like she wanted a website basically, and I was looking at all the CMS options, and then I came across this one, which I think is not being mentioned as much as it should. A node-based open source CMS, very nice UI. There's tons of features, and it's very similar to Contentful in terms of like UI and what you can do. Beautiful CMS. If I were to ever build a website with Gatsby, I would use Strappy as my CMS. There's absolutely no drawbacks. There's no limits. It's free. Only catch is you have to deploy your own instance somewhere, which is not that hard.
I see.
But yeah, just wanted to mention that.
What does it
as the
use on
last
the
thing.
backend? Like, do you say Node or?
Node, yeah, it's node based. Yeah,
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, it's gaining a lot of momentum. Um,
Yeah, well
so you can
maintained.
take a look at the project. Yeah, yeah, it's very, very nice. Yeah. Okay, I will give it back to you, Sergey, and I'll stop my screen sharing.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm actually
taken.
I'm thinking that maybe for today we'll just do the Gatsby and the sharing corner. And like
Okay, yeah,
we'll
yeah,
do the
sure.
same site cookies next time.
Next time, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I took a bit longer than I thought.
Oh, no worries, no worries. It's like our first attempt. It's
Yeah, yeah.
okay. So we'll talk about same site cookies next time, and let's take
Can
off.
you just minimize that second video in the corner? Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Thanks.
But then otherwise, people will not see your like they can. Oh, yeah. Like on my screen, it only shows your video, so I think that's good.
Okay, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I just wish that control could go away, but for the rest, okay. So sharing corner is kind of like like a part of our show where we are kind of like are going to discuss the things that we came across during the week, and like we like them, we recommend that to our audience. Actually, let me go to the preview. Alright, so the first item that I have on the list is user agent freeze. So basically what that is a proposal, or like maybe that's already in the works by Google. So what they want to do is to kind of stop changing the user agent. Like how currently it says sometimes Mozilla, like I don't know, a compatible it changes the version in it, but like as part of it, it like just keeps some kind of historical references, just not to break very very old websites. And
Mm.
Google is trying to push away from it. So the idea here is that they are trying to freeze the kind of the value of navigator user agent to the current version. So say they will implement it in mid-March, which will be Chrome version 81, and or maybe in June, uh, and from their point on, the version will not change. It will be always the same. But then, if uh, if you want to figure out what is the version, then server should send a special header uh, to the browser, and then browser, like I think there might be some kind of a system of permissions where browser would say yes, like I allow this request, now you can identify me. So it's interesting, like I think in terms of privacy it's going to potentially help to protect your privacy, but on the other hand it can be really challenging to figure out what are like the popular what are the popular browsers that your users are
Mm.
using. So like we'll see where it
So
goes.
the motivation behind it is privacy. That's why
As
they're doing this
yeah,
freeze.
as well as clean up, like remove things like Mozilla 5.0, like Gecko, like KHTML, like things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, but they want to kind of prevent active fingerprinting as well. Like there are, by the way, there are some ways. Like I'm using Brave browser, and kind of like
I
uh,
love Brave. Yeah.
yeah, like there is a feature where you can turn on fingerprint protection, and it would kind of like also prevent, like I think it would change the user agent, randomize it so that it would be much harder to identify what it is that you're using. But on the other hand, there are things like ever I don't know, zombie
Can I?
cookies, and like those are the ones that would like keep reviving themselves and kind of identify you. So might be.
Well, maybe you should put zombie cookies on the next show, because I think people would be interested in that.
We'll see.
I don't know what zombie cookies are.
We'll see.
I would like to know.
Okay,
Okay,
maybe in one of the next one shows.
I'll take note.
All right.
Zombie cookies.
Okay, so let's see what else do we have. So I think next item is yours, architecture.
That's mine.
Design record.
Yeah. Yes. So I watched the video. I like to watch a lot of tech videos on my daily commute. I just like I have YouTube Plus subscription, so I can download stuff and watch them offline. Because in Toronto we don't have internet on the subway. We don't have Wi-Fi, which is kind of a shame. Not yet. Yeah. So basically, I came across this video, very powerful presentation, and it was talking about this architecture design record. And the idea is simple. And we all have this need kind of on a project. Every time you want to introduce something new or change something, make a decision on like an architecture decision, and you want to capture everything that led up to that decision. So let's say you're using MySQL and all of a sudden you start using MongoDB, and there's a very valid reason, and there's a lot of discussions that go on. Usually what happens is that rationale and those discussions are not being recorded, or maybe they're put on a website somewhere in a SharePoint and just forgotten. This, I guess, idea is to include an ADR document, like a markdown document, inside your code repository, to kind of capture all the discussions and the decision-making process that took place to introduce or deviate from the current technology. And maybe they have a sample here of what it looks like. Yeah, I think they have examples. If you go back, Sergey.
Yep.
There's examples, yeah. Maybe CSS framework is a good one. Yeah, so this is what the template would look like. And basically, you would have many of these folders. Every time you make a decision, you would have a record of everything that took place. And that way, it's good for future reference, and it's good to not repeat the same mistakes, or to just have that confidence in the decision-making process that happens. So that in case someone new comes on to the project and they start questioning things, they can kind of read through how we landed on the decision that we took.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a pretty powerful idea.
I think that's very, very interesting idea. I see some challenges with it, like someone have to maintain it. It's like someone have to write that down. Like someone have to understand that that's part of your responsibility that you take.
True. So in terms of maintenance, there isn't any, because you write it once and that's it. You move on. This was a decision that we decided to now use Angular instead of React, because React really sucks, Angular is so much better.
Oh.
So you write the document, and that's it. You move on. You record what happens, all the discussions, and but yeah, there is a challenge with like who is responsible for that, and there needs to be some discipline there, I guess. Yeah.
Interesting. That's very cool.
I will try to maybe link to the video, because I think the guy sold it 1,000,000 times better than me, but when I saw the video, I'm like, I'm doing ADRs.
No
I'm
one
doing
could, no one
ADRs.
could be better than you, Marwan. You're
Oh,
the best.
thanks. Appreciate it.
No,
Appreciate the lies.
you have to make the video, and we'll put it as the next episode. Okay?
I will just link to the video and play the video for everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it for this one.
Cool.
We can go to the next one.
Thank you. Right. So the next one is My Decade in Review by Dan Abramov. So everyone know Dan Abramov, like I believe every front-end developer know him, and some of the back-end developers.
Probably, yeah.
He's the kind of like the author of Redux, and he is helping the React team to improve it further. And he kind of like wrote a summary of what happened in his life, like what were the key points for the last decade. So as you can see, that's a very long article, but like he's like trying to kind of like give some overview of like how like his development life was going, and how he ended up being working on the React, and like what are some of the challenges and struggles that he goes through. So I found that very interesting.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. A day in the life of Dan Abramov. I mean, I think he moved from the UK, right?
So
if I remember correctly.
Correct, yes. Like originally, so like he is originally from Russia, the way I understood it, and then he got the opportunity. Like, I mean, there were like a couple of things that he mentioned. Maybe like someone can read that article, but in 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 there he was saying that eventually he moved into the Facebook office that is in the UK. So apparently there is an office there, and then from there he moved to America.
And I think he brought his cat over, from what I remember.
Yeah, like they
Which I
sponsored
found interesting.
his cat.
Yeah.
Like I think paid like 5,000 or something like that. Well,
damn, it's worth it, man. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. People will think it's ridiculous, but by the way, if anyone is listening and they pay attention to how Sergey sounds, he sounds a lot like Dan. So write something in the comment if you agree.
Hello, my name is Dan Abramov, and today we're going to talk about Redux.
Oh, nice. You're gonna invent Redux?
Reinvent.
No, but for real, seriously.
But we do have a lot of common things with him. Like I found, like after reading that article, that like both are from post USSR countries, and migrated to North America, married in a young age, and
Oh yeah.
struggle with like he mentioned some struggling with the English. Like I kind of like went through that as well, but
yeah, but your English is perfect now.
it's
You're a big shot podcaster.
Yeah.
By the way, I like Pocket. It's an amazing app.
Yeah, so
I didn't know it was on there.
So I actually discovered it this weekend. I didn't know about that. Like, I mean, I knew that it exists, and I knew that it's like a way to save articles, but I had no idea like what it can do. And like the way how I found it, like I found that it's a part of the Mozilla family. It's like one of their products.
Really?
Yeah.
They bought it?
Yeah, like a while ago.
Interesting.
I think like it potentially evolved from one of the products that they were building internally, like for saving bookmarks, and then like it kind of like evolved into what it is right now. But what I didn't know, that it has an ability to play back the articles that you're saving. So you can like create a list of articles, and kind of like there would be an icon of the headphones. You click on it, and it would start reading. So imagine.
Read out loud.
Yes, read out loud. It would kind of alternate the voices that it has, so it wouldn't read the same the next article in the same voice. It would kind of like go to the next voice. toggles between male and female voice, and
Okay.
I
So it
listened.
doesn't get too boring to mono.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like the voice is pretty good for what it what it's doing. Like it struggles with some of the words that are phonetically different from like how they're written, but yeah, it's very cool. And I used that
Nice. Yeah.
Pocket app like as I was working out. I listened to that My Decade in Review by Dan Abramov. So like it actually
Oh,
it like you saw that it wasn't a small page, right? And if you listen for it, it's like half an hour of like of playback of like
oh,
what's
really?
happening. So that's like I feel that Pocket helped me like to kind of listen from start to the end. It has a ability to kind of seek, so you can like jump right in the middle, or like go back 15 seconds or forward. And once it's done with what you're listening right now, then it would autoplay the next item in your list. I find that super like like very very cool feature.
Yeah, I guess I didn't know about the playback. I'd been using it for a long time, and I kind of stopped. Same reason, like on the subway, you don't have internet, so I would just preload articles. But now I'm more into videos. That's why I stopped using it. Yeah. But yeah, very cool app.
Okay, so next one, since we were talking about Dan Abramov, is just JavaScript. So it's basically a website that Dan came up with together with Maggie Appleton, and you probably know her for some of the cool visualizations, like for example for GraphQL. Like she kind of like tries to help you create a mind map, and Dan wanted to like put a website and work together with her to come up with some kind of ways to explain the internals of JavaScript, how it's working, just to help out beginner developers or like someone who is not too familiar to get more comfortable with JavaScript. And like the way how it works, like you just enter your name and email address, and you would start getting some mental models into your email box.
Yeah, I signed up today. We'll see. Apparently, I'll be receiving draft starting tomorrow. I want to see what he has to say about JavaScript.
Yep.
Pretty cool.
Okay, so the next one.
Yeah, so utility first CSS. So I think that's a pretty controversial topic. I am kind of really sold on the idea of utility classes for CSS. Basically, there's a whole argument online about semantic CSS versus utility CSS. And I really don't see the value in the semantic CSS. Like I mentioned earlier, I've been doing front-end development for so long. And most of my life, I use BEM and OCSS and all these patterns. And honestly, I just think, they slow you down. Like you constantly have to come up with class names and namespace it and do the BEM thing. And your CSS will live, in the same place as your component, I guess. And then with the introduction of CSS in JS and like CSS modules, I really I'm starting to really like utility classes more than anything. And I basically just did like a little experiment with it. So Tachyon and Tailwind are the two biggest that are in use right now. Tachyon looks a bit more mature. It's like on version 4. But basically, like everything, they have class names for everything. So if you scroll up, Sergey, all the way, and go to docs, just to show you quickly. So these are all the different categories that Tachyon will give you classes on. So go to like spacing, just to show you.
Spacing.
I think it's spacing. Yeah, so spacing. So in here, you will have padding and margins, and they have a very simple system. It's, like PA1 is one scale, which means like padding all, PA, and then you put the scale that you want. Same with the margins. They have max width. They have like every type of thing you want to do from a layout perspective, from font sizes, many CSS classes. It's like, you know how in Bootstrap you have like the grid classes, which is like a utility class. These guys are going all the way and providing you with utility classes for everything. So you could kind of get away with never have to write your own CSS. As long as your designs have some logic behind them, like the spacing is like there's a ratio that follows. It's not just like random magic numbers of pixels. I think it's really it's like it's even better if you're a developer and you don't have designs and you're trying to put something together. If you just follow their ratio, your designs will look amazing.
I see. Interesting.
So, yeah, big fan of utility classes. Hoping to use it more and more in the future on bigger projects.
I will be honest, I'm kind of like a bit skeptical about that approach. Like, I guess right now I'm on the other side. Like, I'm more kind of like into the semantic classes. The reason for that is I find that like when you have like I'm not against necessarily like the idea of like having helper classes for spacing, like double the size, like, or half the size. I think that can work out. And can like help you to reuse the same patterns that you like keep reinventing. However, like I think that like the number of things that this library gives you, like just from what I see right now, it's a bit too much. So like I can imagine someone might use like maybe potentially overuse it. So in the end, you would just end up like with like markup that has so
dirty HTML.
Yeah, like the markup that has so many classes that like at that point maybe it's like you could just write all of that in style attributes instead of using the classes.
Yeah. So that's exactly what the argument is, and there's heated debate online on both ends of the. This is exactly what they're talking about a really convoluted HTML or markup versus semantic. I think either one could work. I just find that I'm much faster with this approach because I have less to think about in terms of coming up with names and also like the break the responsive design is already built in, so everything is like you'll see they have small, extra small, medium, so they have like these classes that will have like a postfix of -m-l. So you can also have like responsive like pretty easily without having to write your own media queries within your semantic CSS.
Yeah, I think kind of like you might run into the limits with that solution as well, but just healthy choices, like don't overdo something just because you can. Like try to.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
Try to combine like both approaches, and like see maybe you can find your own way, or also like kind of as long as there is some convention within the team and like some agreement within the team, then yeah, like that's totally going to help to work faster and be happier. Yeah,
I'm sure we will discuss this subject in the future.
100%.
Because it is a big subject, yeah.
Yes, probably many times.
Especially now that we know we're on different ends of the spectrum, we discuss it a lot more.
Yep.
And yeah, tachyon is just another one. It's okay. We don't have to go through it. It's very similar. It's more advanced, but I don't even know the full extent of it. I've only used tachyon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's see what's next. Alright, so there is that feature in Brave that they are adding right now called the Wayback machine. So I think that's something that I'm not even sure if it's available in my version right now, like in the current active version, but it's certainly available in beta. And right now, so see, like this page is not available right now. Like it's kind of like it's saying can find the page. It's a 404 page. So the way how that is going to work in the new version of Brave is going to bring up the pop-up. It looks like that at the top of the page, saying that sorry, page is missing. Do you want to check the saved version? If it's available in Wayback machine.
Oh.
And then you press on that button, and then like it's going to try to do a lookup and serve you the content that was there before.
So just quickly before, like in case people don't know, what is the Wayback machine?
Oh yeah, let's take a look at that. Wayback machine. So it's like a place that is going through the website, scrapes them over time, like obviously it's going through the publicly available pages and just tries to kind of like save them into the archive so that like later if someone is looking for information they can easily find them. So if we look up that page that I couldn't find, then given that you would see that pop up, you will see so in 2020 there's no page like that, but there are some snapshots earlier, and right now it's loading. But yeah, it's just like what kind of pages you had before. Like you can load like say Amazon and take a look at how it looked 10 years ago.
Look, yeah. Okay, sounds good.
So I guess same result here, but I know that like in 2013 they had something else. So yeah, I find that's pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
Alright, the next one. So there is like a new API that Chrome team is releasing that would allow you to make phone calls when you click on the tell link. So you already know that feature. You could mark up some links as tell, and like once you click on it, then it would bring the UI on your phone. But what's interesting here is that that's the API for you to click on your desktop to make the phone call from your phone. So it's like
pretty nice.
Like you don't have to go to your phone. Like you can just like click on something as you were searching, and like it would bring the UI where like you can just like make a call right away. And I found that in a tweet. Like they also mentioned that there is another feature where you can share a clipboard between desktop and mobile. Like
oh, that's so helpful, man.
Yeah, like when you like want to copy stuff, you don't have to send it over. Like it's supposed to go over secure channels as well, like directly between the devices.
Okay.
However, there is one gotcha that I found. I couldn't get it working on my machine. The reason for that is because you have to be logged into your Google account for that to work. So I think that's kind of like a downside for me. I don't want to compromise privacy for that feature, but I think that's very, very, very powerful.
Nice. Yeah, it would be better if it wasn't through Google.
Right.
It was just like somehow.
If
Okay, that's pretty good to know. Yeah, it's very annoying to have to copy stuff. Even when you sent me our password, that was like this long of a million different character. I found that hard to send from my phone.
yeah. Alright. The next one is CSS Motion Path. So that's like, did you know about that feature? Like, it's kind of like allowing you to animate.
No, I didn't know this. No.
Animate the element against the path, and like that's something like similar to SVG, where like you can define like the path in the SVG. So like that's how you can animate the element as well. Like you can just like take any element and.
I'm so bad when it comes to animations. Like I see the keyframe stuff sometimes, but I never like dug into like really advanced CSS animations.
And I just want to show you kind of like how it works. So it's almost like as if it takes the element and like makes it as a position relative, and then like move it away from where it is. So like it's not affecting what's around the element.
Oh, nice. And it doesn't have collision detection. That's a downside.
Yes, I mean like that's kind of just declarative static markup like style.
I know, but
maybe you can.
it would be nice to have a game engine in here.
Maybe that's possible. I have no idea. Like, that would be
Next talk with Sergey.
Alright.
Man, you have like 100 of these.
No, that's the light.
I had 2.
Well, next time you will prepare better.
Yeah, I guess.
So that's like I was just collecting links over the weekend, over the week. Like I was thinking, that would be cool. Like what?
Yeah, because I didn't even know we're doing this segment, just as an FYI.
But for FYI, like for people that are still with us, that
people that are still
that was your idea, like to kind of like have a section
yeah.
where we are sharing like what we learned during the week.
Well, I didn't know. I was just saying stuff. I didn't know we were gonna actually shoot an episode.
All right, the last one for today.
Okay.
So worm coding hands. So like, do you ever have that experience where like you're writing something in your keyboard and you find that your hands are really cold, like because the room is cold, but like it's just you get that uncomfortable feeling. Like, do you ever get that or no?
I can't say I have.
So the building where I'm working right now, like they set the temperature sometimes to like 19 degrees. I have no idea why. Like there are like people complain a little, but so like,
oh yeah, okay.
Now I'm actually like I got used to the temperature, but I also found that sometimes my hands get cold, and like that's kind of like the same problem as that guy has, like Gatsby. Like
it seems like a real thing, yeah.
Yeah, and like he was talking in that article like the things that he tried to use, like gloves, some warmers, like electrical warmers, and small desk heaters, like all of that like wasn't working. So what he found out that like he was kind of like found out as he was kind of sitting in his outside sauna that like he absorbed a lot of heat out of the water, and then like after that he wasn't really feeling the cold from the outside. He even links to like some source where like there is like official explanation of like how like what are the effects of the warm water on your body. So
Okay.
so that's basically like his solution is to kind of like have something like with warm water near you where like you can soak your hands into for like maybe half a minute to a minute, and then like you can keep working for another half an hour. So like he's combining
What?
his Pomodoro technique, and like once he's done with it, then like he kind of like soaks the hands into that thing.
Interesting.
Yeah. So like hence.
So his Pomodoro is what, like half an hour or
Yeah.
something?
So like hence the image of like a lobster, like like
No,
warming up
what?
his hands into the bath.
Warming up himself.
Lobstering.
Poor lobster. No, that's very cool, man. I didn't know that people have these problems.
Yeah, like I find that I can try, like I do struggle with it a little bit sometimes, not all the time, not right now, but yeah, and I think that's something that could be helpful.
Yeah, very nice.
All right, I think
Okay.
that's it for today.
That should conclude our first talk. It was, I enjoyed it.
Yes.
I liked it. It's nice. And I hope people have liked it as well. And anything else to say, Sergey?
No.
Before we end it?
Yeah, like please leave comments if you agree or disagree about something. Like it would be interesting, or like if you have another perspective, if you want to share something with us, like if you have an interesting project that you're working on, and like you want to mention that, and like it's something that would be interesting for us to check out, and maybe we'll talk about it in the next episode.
Yeah. Sounds good. Sounds great.
Yes, like, subscribe, etc., etc.
Like and subscribe. Okay. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.